All right, well, good evening and welcome to everyone who is watching and following along with this edition of the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame's Hall Call interview series. I am Will Driscoll, the executive director here at the Hall of Fame. And as always, I'm happy to bring you another exciting edition of Hall Call. Before we get started, I, of course, want to thank our sponsors here at the Hall of Fame: Priority Automotive, the City of Virginia Beach, the Beck Foundation, Davcon Inc., Optima Health, White Claw Hard Seltzer, ESPN Radio 94.1, Hamilton Realty, and Davis Business Appraisers. Without them, we wouldn't be able to bring you Hall Call or our induction coming up just next weekend. And speaking of the induction, we're 10 days away from the 50th induction in our history. And today we continue the induction discussion with another one of our 2023 inductees, DeAngelo Hall. And where to begin? All-state defensive back at Deep Creek High School, all Big East and All-American at Virginia Tech before becoming a first-round draft pick by the Atlanta Falcons in 2004 in the NFL draft. 14 seasons in the NFL, the last 10 with the Washington Commanders franchise, 3 Pro Bowls, 43 interceptions, 10 touchdowns, a member of the Commanders' 90 greatest players of all time. And now we're just 10 days away from becoming a Virginia Sports Hall of Fame inductee. So DeAngelo, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh man, thanks for having me, Will.
Absolutely. Well, we're happy to have you. And, let's go ahead and get started. We got the most recent news. Let's go ahead and start with the most recent news. Obviously, people can see you're wearing the black, silver, and blue of the Carolina Panthers. You recently joined their staff as the defensive backs coach. What have the first few weeks in coaching been like for you?
I mean, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I think, one of the things that I missed, after I finished playing was really that competition, that being in the locker room, that, everybody fighting for one goal. And so, I enjoyed, my time on TV. Shout outs to NFL Network for giving me that opportunity. But, when Coach Wright and, the rest of the coaches on this staff called, man, it was too hard for me to pass up on this opportunity, man. We got a great group of coaches. A great group of players, and coaching was definitely something that that I had my eye on for a number of years. Especially, you shouted out the 14 years. The last couple was injury ridden, and so I was basically a coach, a player coach in a sense, and so I got a little bit of a taste of it then, and like everybody else in this league, I aspire to be a head coach at some point, and so. I'm not getting any younger. You can see these grades, so I had to start at some point.
You and me both, right? So you mentioned that it was your last couple of years where you started to kind of become almost a player coach. Was that when the idea of coaching snuck into your mind, or was that something that you've been thinking about prior to?
Yeah, I think over those last couple of years, it kind of just snuck into my mind. When I was playing, I never saw myself as a coach. But like I said, just being one of those older players, kind of mentoring the younger guys, and kind of sharing those little nuggets of wisdom, the mistakes I made along the way and things like that. Not even talking about just scheme, just really talking about life, and just just trying to give these young players an opportunity to to just kind of just to pour into those guys in a sense.
What sort of coach is DeAngelo Hall? Old school, new school, bit of both?
Yeah, I think you got to have a little bit of mixture of both. You got to have some tough love at times. You got to be able to love them up. Today's athlete is a little bit different in a sense. And so, you kind of got to have a little bit of that bend and compromise. Not too many Bill Parcells and, Coach Belichick's running around in today's modern day NFL.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a different game these days. As a coach, though, what are you hoping to accomplish? If you had to set goals for yourself as the defensive backs coach this year with the Carolina Panthers, what are the goals you're trying to accomplish this year?
Myself, I'm just trying to get better. I'm actually the assistant defensive backs coach. We got another guy named Jonathan Cooley, who's the head DB coach. He spent a couple of years in LA with the Rams, and he was an understudy to a coach by the name of Raheem Morris that I know very well, that I played for. And so, we kind of speak the same language, but, for me, it's really just trying to learn as much as I can. We have so many great coaches on this staff that are willing to just pour into you. And so, I think that was what made this opportunity so intriguing. I could have got on, a number of times at other places, but I just didn't feel like they were the right situation for me personally to grow. And this staff has been nothing but great. Obviously this is a results-based business, and we got to win games, and hopefully we'll figure out who that number 1 pick is in the next week or so. And we can start trending trending to that goal of trying to win some games.
That's right. So this year you're on a team that has a number one pick. The last few years you were on a show that was talking about and speculating about number one picks. What was your broadcasting experience like? Did you enjoy the studio atmosphere, or did you enjoy the game day atmosphere when you were on the call with the Washington Commanders?
Well, you know what? I think being on those calls, and being there at game day really showed me that I missed this game. And, I think that was probably one of the things that, when you get on the field pregame and you get to talking to everybody and, all right, the game's about to start, you got to go to the booth and make that call. I was like, I want to stay down here. I want to stay, in the thick of things. And so, I thoroughly enjoyed calling games. The studio work is fun too. Just TV in general, it's so easy. I found myself working for an hour and really feeling like work. And, I'm putting in 12-hour days sometimes and it feels like 30 minutes. It doesn't feel like work at all. And so, I've just really enjoyed, like I said, just learning what goes into the other side. I think as players, sometimes you don't really see, all the hard work and hours that coaches put in. You just kind of get the game plan and bam, you got your meetings and things like that. And we think that's pretty time consuming. But the coaching side of things is a lot more demanding. But I got a great family. My wife, she was 100% behind me. I think that was the biggest thing that really showed me that, there's no time like the present. Is when my family was 100% supportive and behind me and, and really wanted me to chase this dream.
So 12 hours feeling like 30 minutes. We're not going to be like old Joe Gibbs who's got the cot set up in the office, right?
Nah, I'm going home and sleeping in my bed for sure.
All right, very nice, very nice. Well, let's take it back a little bit further then. Obviously, you're from Chesapeake. There's a lot of great athletes from Chesapeake. You had a lot of great coaches, but who were you looking up to as a player when you were growing up in Chesapeake and attending Deep Creek High School?
I think the one name that really pops into my head who's kind of down this journey with me, is Dre Bly. Dre was coaching over at UNC, and he's got the opportunity to now be the assistant DB's coach with the Detroit Lions. And I can remember talking to him before I took this job and, just hanging with him at the combine and just all the different stories that we shared. Just about a young D Hall going to Dre's barbershop, challenging him. This was right after Dre had won a Super Bowl, and I'm out there trying to race him, as a little middle school, high school kid. And so, just really watching guys like Dre, watching guys from the other side of the water, Allen Iverson and Michael Vick and all of these guys from the same area I'm from make it, it really gave me, a vision that, that it was possible.
Talk about that 757 pride. Obviously, the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame represents the entire state, and we see that with this year's class. There's connections all over the state, but you're a 757 guy. I'm a 757 native. There's something to pun the festival that's coming up soon. There is something in the water here. I mean, talk about that 757 pride that you and your fellow peers have.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And is nationally known. You talk to other guys from LA, Long Beach, and Texas and Florida, and they know all about the 757. They understand that we have some great athletes, but it's just that competitive fire. I think a lot of people ask me, what does it take to be a great DB? And I'm like, you got to have confidence, obviously. And, I just think the 757, you go up against so many great athletes, man, that a lot of guys who didn't make it that I can remember competing against. And I just remember them players just really stoking my fire along the way. I wasn't, I wasn't a 5-star recruit. I wasn't necessarily always the best player. I was a really good player, but it was all of those guys that really motivated me to try to be the best version of myself that I could be.
Well, taking that version and being the best version of yourself, you're now bringing it just to Chesapeake specific. You're now in the same category as Kenny Easley, William Fuller, Alonzo Mourning, Dre Bly, who you mentioned, Michael Kadire, athletes, and there are others. I mean, you will be the 14th inductee into the Hall just from Chesapeake. When you hear your name associated with names like that, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it's a tremendous honor. I played AAU basketball with BJ Upton, and just to see BJ, to see Ryan Zimmerman, guys from not even Chesapeake, but kind of that area and really my era. Just watching all of us, just have success in athletics, man. It's definitely humbling. And I tell my kids all the time, they've were born in Northern Virginia, spent some time in Georgia. Now they'll be down here in Charlotte. And, what I always tell them is you got 757 blood in you. So don't ever forget that. You got to always compete. You got to always work your butt off. You're going to have a little bit of talent, but, you still got to put in that hard work. And so, I'm always taking them down there. My mom still lives in that 757 area right outside of Western Branch. And so, I'm always trying to really show them where I'm from so that they understand the magnitude of, the guys that came before them.
That competition is still strong here. You can go to any game on a Friday night in the fall. You can go to any basketball court. The competition is still strong. But you mentioned about your recruitment coming out of high school into college and how you weren't, say, quote unquote, a highly touted recruit. But I'm always fascinated at recruiting stories. And do you have one for us that stands out that you always remember from your recruitment and what ultimately led you to Virginia Tech?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple. I think the special thing about Virginia Tech, I just felt that family atmosphere. We had a lot of guys from the 757 around that time who were at Virginia Tech. And so it almost felt like a second home. But it was the personal touches. It was Coach Brian Steinspring sending me handwritten letters when every other college was sending, typed up kind of generic letters. It was, Coach Beamer and Coach Ward, the DB coach coming in there to visit me and really, really giving me that confidence that I could help that program win. And, one of my biggest regrets, I say that now, was really leaving school early, and, everything worked out. But I remember Coach Beamer telling me and Kevin Jones and Brian Randall and, a lot of us that was in that recruiting class that our senior year, we played for a national championship. And I kind of shrugged it off. I was kind of singularly focused on, making sure my family and my mom was taken care of. She was a single parent who raised us. I was the youngest of 6. And so, just really watching her as a school teacher with 2 degrees, just really live check to check. I had to go, but I sit back and I think, and that was my rookie year, Kevin Jones's rookie year. He was a running back, one of the highest recruits ever in Virginia Tech. I want to say he was the #1 recruit in the country that year. We played, which was, like I said, our rookie year. Virginia Tech played USC on opening night at FedEx Field. They ended up losing that game by a touchdown, but yet that Virginia Tech team still made it to a BCS bowl game, and they played Auburn in the Sugar Bowl and ended up losing to Auburn. And I'm just like, man, if me and Kevin Jones stay in school, like every time I see Coach Beamer, I almost apologize because I'm like, Beams, we could have got you one, man, And so that kind of haunts me, having never won a championship in football. That was one that I was like, that was definitely one I feel like got away.
Well, you mentioned Coach Beamer, and Coach Beamer is a 2018 inductee, soon to be a fellow inductee here into the Hall of Fame. What would you say was his biggest influence on you as a player in your career?
Just demanding the most out of me. From at times I could be viewed as a little bit of a selfish player. Especially early in my career, I was young. I went to college at 17. Got drafted at 20 years old. And so, the naive part of me always felt like, man, if I go make a play, if I do this, it'll help us win. And, it really wasn't until I got around, Mike Shanahan, I got around Raheem Morris, and those guys really challenged me as a player, challenged me that, yeah, D Hall, you can kind of coast through practice and still turn it up for the games. And, but if you pour into the rest of these guys, if you show them, how to practice the right way, if you lead the right way, these guys will follow. And, I kind of took that personally as a challenge. And, from that point on, I kind of felt myself really evolve as a leader. Got an opportunity to wear that C on my chest. And, I tried to wear it with as much pride as possible because those coaches were 100% right. When I came out there with a positive attitude and I was ready to work and I was challenging other guys around me, the level of our football team definitely skyrocketed.
Yeah, that reverence for Coach Beamer is not unique to you. A lot of the conversations we have, it's still that exact answer will almost come up. This next question, though, I might be showing both of our age here. But what do you remember most about the Big East football conference, the old Big East with Miami,
man.
DC, Tech, West Virginia?
Yeah. I mean, just drag out battles. Going up to West Virginia, they throwing batteries at you. Going down to the U and playing against those super talented Miami football teams, Pittsburgh. I played against 3 Biletnikoff Award winners in a row at Pittsburgh: Lateef Grimm, Antonio Bryant, and Larry Fitzgerald. And so, I just remember, it might be a conference that no longer exists, but I tell you what, man, we had some rich traditions, some really intense rivalries. And a lot of people think I played in the ACC, but I tell them all the time, nah, I'm part of that old school Big East.
I noticed you didn't mention my alma mater, Temple University, and I'm trying to remember how many games we won during your years there, and I think I can count on one hand.
Heck, I tell you what, you talk about Temple. Now, people think I'm a little older when I talk about playing at the Vet, but I never played at the Vet as a pro. I played at the Vet in Philadelphia against Temple, and I tell you what, when they built Lincoln Financial, we all were so hyped because the Vet. You hear stories about pro players telling you how the Vet would always take 3 or 4 guys ACLs out. We had a couple guys test some ACLs on that nasty field up there at the old Vet Stadium. So we were all super pumped when Temple got to go play at the new stadium that the Eagles built, which was Lincoln Financial.
I may have been one of the 6,000 people in attendance that day when you were up there last. You're talking about your college career at Tech. You were selected as the 2003 Big East Special Teams Player of the Year, and anybody who's followed, especially Virginia Tech football, but really who followed college football, we remember Beamer ball, and we remember how strong of a component special teams was to the culture in that program. Did you enjoy special teams, or was that just something that was thrust upon you and you said, I got this opportunity, I need to take it and maximize it?
Well, in high school, special teams is always viewed as the part of the game that you put the guys who aren't going to play on offense and defense. But I can remember going to Virginia Tech, and it was such a thing of pride. I mean, to the point that Coach Beamer called the punt return team Pride and Joy, because that was the thing he coached, and it meant something to be the returner. It meant something to be on those teams. I mean, we had Heisman Trophy candidates out there blocking kicks for us and blocking. Holding up headhunters and things like that on the return teams. And so, it was a badge of honor to be a part of Coach Beamer's special teams. And so I remember taking that mindset, because for me, it was a kind of a shift in really philosophy, right? And even now as a pro, right, I try to tell a lot of our young guys, like, this is where we're going to win the game. A lot of people try to take this play off. This is the play, and I think back to my Virginia Tech days, from Andre Davis back there returning, Ricky Hall, myself having a chance, Eddie Royal, just so many great returners and so many great special teams players. Just because Coach Beamer, he made it a point to not use that down as just a waste down. He wanted to put the best players out there on the field. So we can get an advantage.
There's a reason why they say there's 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. And it's amazing how overlooked that special teams component can be. And we've been fortunate here in Virginia to be able to watch some of that phase perfected almost throughout the years. But jumping ahead to your pro career, you played 14 seasons in the NFL, your first 4 with the Falcons and the Oakland Raiders, but your last decade was with the Washington franchise. Was it fun or difficult playing for what many people here consider the hometown team?
I mean, it was fun. It was definitely super fun. I grew up a huge Darryl Green fan, right? And so, I never thought it was possible. When I was drafted to Atlanta, I saw a guy like Keith Brooken, who was our starting middle linebacker. He had grew up in South Georgia. He went to Georgia Tech, and he was playing for the home team, the Atlanta Falcons. And so I always thought that was so cool. And before I went to Oakland, we were trying to work a trade out to go to Washington, but just things didn't happen. And so, I ended up accepting the trade, going to Oakland. And when they kind of released me during the season, it was a no-brainer, to make the move to come to Washington. And then I ended up signing that deal with Washington and, finishing my career there. But we had our ups and downs. The Commanders are still kind of going through some things, right? But it always felt like home. And it wasn't necessarily because it was the Commanders or the Redskins at the time. It was such a rich, fan base that just loved you for who you were. It didn't matter. I had people hollering out my high school, hollering out Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's such a huge, market in that Northern Virginia area. So it just, I always felt the unconditional love being that I was a kid from Virginia.
You mentioned that tradition and that legacy, and the team has a rich tradition and legacy, regardless of what's gone on in recent years. But I know that you're wearing the blue, silver, and black right now, but when you look at the names on the Commanders' all-time greatest list, the 90 greatest Commanders of all time, and then you're also in that category, what sort of emotions does that bring on to you personally?
I mean, like I said, it's a huge honor, right? To watch a guy like Darrell Green play for so many years. And, when I joined this organization, or not this one, but when I joined that organization, to get a chance to have intimate conversations with Darrell. I mean, I was just texting him, earlier today, just checking in on him. And just all the, like you said, just all the legends that were a part of, all of that history. It's something that I value more than almost anything. Are those personal relationships that I was able to form. Didn't always win a lot of games, but like I said, just being from Virginia, to me, it just meant so much to be a part of that organization for so many years.
You've mentioned Darrell Green's name multiple times in our conversation now. What stuck out to you in the way he played? We many people who are watching this or will listen know that he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so we know he's a good football player. But what stuck out to you about the way he played the game?
I think it was a combination of everything. Obviously, I was a guy who had a lot of speed, and so the similarities are obviously there when you talk about how fast Darrell was, how fast I was. I think I played a little bigger than Darrell. Don't tell him I said that. And I could probably catch the ball a little better. But just Darrell was a fierce competitor, man. And I just remember having conversations with him and Deion Sanders, and just hearing the differences of how Darrell always wanted to go follow the best guy. And Prime was one of those players that was like, look, y'all double team him, let me go get the other guy. And so just really understanding how those guys, both great players, both Hall of Famers, just how they approach the game, the amount of time they put in. I worked with Darrell quite a bit when I was up there, just footwork drills and things like that. And I mean, it's amazing. The dude was 40-some years old and could still probably outrun a lot of current players.
Yeah, lots of good tales about the later years in his career and how that speed carried over. Whereas usually when you're losing speed, as you older, he didn't lose his speed.
Nah.
Just got a couple more for you here, but you mentioned being fast, and you mentioned the ability to catch the ball. And one of the things that I love most about each induction cycle is putting the bios together and really trying to learn more about each inductee. And one of the things I learned in this process over the last year is you're the only NFL player with at least 5 fumble return touchdowns and 5 interception return touchdowns in NFL history. Is that a coincidence, or is there some science behind that?
It's a little bit of a science. I've always been just a ball hawk. Whether it was trying to strip guys carrying the football. A lot of people point to the play I had against Virginia Tech, but I'm like, man, I remember doing that in high school, forming up, tackling a guy, and I feel the football, and I'm able to kind of just get it out. I won a Pro Bowl MVP taking the ball from Wes Welker, same way, just making a tackle. Oh man, I feel this ball. Everybody always say you must be living right, because sometimes I did get a couple lucky bounces where that ball just boop, just bounced right up in my hands, and it was pretty easy once it bounced in my hands. But yeah, I've always kind of been a guy that prided myself on taking the football away. I felt like that's the biggest factor in winning games is can we take the football away from the other team and give our offense another crack at it? And so, yes, I tell people all the time, I was a pretty good corner, but I was a damn good football player.
Extra possessions are always valuable, no matter what sport you're playing. I'll get you out of here on what might be a difficult question, but who's the bigger rival to DeAngelo Hall, UVA football or Dallas Cowboys?
Ooh. Hey, look, I'm watching film on guys, and I'm like, I don't know if I don't like that dude because he went to UVA, or if I just don't like him because he's not very good. So I probably say UVA, even though I was so close to almost going to UVA. I was a huge Anthony Poindexter fan, and so I was very close to going to UVA, but not really, because I just, like I said, it's just Virginia Tech just felt like home, and it's something that we all kind of still agree with, even though the Cowboys are a little bit of a rivalry. But to me, it's UVA hands down.
Well, you mentioned Anthony Poindexter. He joined the Hall of Fame last year as part of the class of 2022, and next week you'll be here in Virginia Beach to do the same. And so, DeAngelo, we thank you for taking time out of what I know is a busy schedule. You got the draft to look forward to. We got the induction next week, but I appreciate you taking some time out of that schedule to join us today.
Oh, I appreciate it, Will. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to next week. And of course, I'd like to thank everyone who watched this and will follow along and will listen to us on the Hall Call podcast. As always, thank you to our sponsors who you see over my shoulders. Be sure to stay up to date on all things Virginia Sports Hall of Fame and the Hall Call interview series by following our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also listen to the Hall Call podcast on Apple, Spotify, or SoundCloud. The 2023 induction is just 10 days away, so the countdown is officially on. Once again, I'm Will Driscoll with the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Whatever you do, participate, don't spectate, and we will see you next time.